Hello and welcome to You Are Not Alone. This is the show where I interview friends and people that I've met who have gone through life-changing changes through having experienced God's intervention in their lives. My guest today, which I'm lucky to have, is an old friend of mine for about 30 years now who has worked in my industry in sales. And he's the kind of guy for probably once every 10 years we'd bump into each other and talk. And it was just like we spoke the day before. He's a wonderful guy, and I never knew about his history. And about 2 months ago, Bill sent me a happy work anniversary note on LinkedIn, which started a whole conversation between the two of us. And as a result, he's here today talking with us. I'd like to introduce Bill Mulligan, who lives in Clarks Summit, Pennsylvania, which is up by Scranton. Bill, thanks for coming with us today.
Thank you for having me, Scott. It is I'm looking forward to our chat, and it's a beautiful thing that we were able to connect through LinkedIn and way that you kind of laid this out. I tried to explain to my wife how I knew you, and you just explained it perfectly. We didn't work together, but we certainly were in the industry, and always when we would connect, it was a pleasure.
Oh, always.
And I love what you're doing right now. I just love what you're doing, and I'm so excited to be just invited to talk a little bit about my experience and how it kind of lines up with some of the things that you're experiencing and some of the things that you're talking about on your program.
Well, I was fascinated because from the anxiety standpoint, you and I have a very similar path, and it just awed me to know what you went through, how it affected you, how you got yourself through it as well, and how it led you to where you are now. Jumping forward, and this might blow some of your conversation, but prior to all of this, had you followed Christ? Were you a big believer going through all of this, or is this something that you experienced as a result later on?
So the timeline, Scott, is basically I'm 65 years old now, and right about in the middle of my life, by the grace of God and with the help of some really good friends, I became a believer in Jesus Christ. That was when I was 33 years old. But as I often explain in my testimony, things in my life changed dramatically in a good way, but it's not like I won life's lottery, right? We still live in a broken, fallen world,
For sure.
And there are still problems that present themselves day to day, which just remind me more that this earth is not our home, and the best part is yet to come. But God's got us here for a reason. So probably 3.5 years ago, I experienced this anxiety that you and I talked about, like I had never ever experienced before. And while I was going through it, it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And even my relationship with a living God was not going to help me through this episode quickly. It was going to be a process.
Oh, yeah.
And that, looking back now, I know there were reasons that God had me go through it. If I had my choice, I probably would have said, I'll pass on this one. We can talk later, but I don't necessarily need or want to experience. It was horrible, Scott. It was to the point where some of the things that are the most sure to me just became not so sure.
Yeah.
For example, I couldn't read my Bible. I just couldn't. I couldn't. So the thing that would always bail me out of a tough spot became just something that I couldn't do, just because I wasn't able to focus. I couldn't read 2 verses before I lost my attention span. And by the grace of God, the help of some doctors, some medicine, some good friends. I'm on the other side of it, but it's something that I think it's another one of those things that I think I'll live with probably for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's there. It's right around the next corner, and it's something I need to protect against letting it get to a point where it basically sidelines me.
You said something that, I keep a journal, not as well as I should, but it hit me one morning how, if you want to call it evil, anxiety is, because anxiety forces us to focus on nothing but ourselves out of fear. And do you know that the Bible says, do not be afraid 365 times in that book? He tells us every day not to be afraid, but we can't listen when we're in that toxic mess, and it separates us from your readings, your study, your Bible, because we are so focused on us, and that's what you found out.
I totally agree, Scott, and that 365 day stat that you just quoted. I just listened to a guy yesterday, and he's an ex-military guy, and he was involved in helping some of his friends and some women and children get out of Afghanistan a couple years ago when they had no other way out. And him and a group of others did it. And his wife said to him, she said, wow, like, you're fearless. And he said, no. He said, I struggle with fear. He said, every day. He has this battle with fear. You would never know it from the line of work he chose, but he had quoted that statistic that the Bible mentions not to be afraid 365 times, and I think there's a reason for that, right? Because I pretty much struggle with it every day of my life, and it sounds like this fella did, and I think that you could share the same.
Coming in today, I was talking to a buddy of mine that I've known for 45 years, who has been suffering with it since he was a kid. He had a couple of tough experiences in life, and he's got a control over it now. But we just talked about how it rules your life. For you and I, we know that the discipline it takes to continue to look to God in such a selfish disease that it is so difficult, and it's a wonderful thing when you get through it, because all you have after that is God, don't you? I mean, and the loved ones in your life, yeah.
Yeah, that is absolutely all. And listen, as I look back on this, even as 33 years ago, when I accepted the Lord, I had tried every other way, Scott. I had tried every other way to get through life, whether it be working harder or drinking, or my ill-conceived plan to ditch my family and just run off and find better people. None of that worked, and my last resort was God. I'm sorry to admit that, but I believe He brings us, a lot of us who are a little bit, let's say, thick-headed. He will bring us to the end of ourselves, right? And welcome us home, even when we have tried every other way. When I had my anxiety situation recently, I had tried every other way. Same thing. Even though I knew that God was in control, I knew He would provide for everything we needed. I had myself worried into a state where I had forgotten all those things. I was trying every other way on my own, and God got my attention. He took sleep away, He took food away, and then He basically sent me to the ER to confess to the good folks there that my wife said I was crazy and they should take it from here. It was tragic, but it was somewhat predictable, and as we look back, almost humorous to see that I had to run every other option first before I really figured this out on my own.
And that's one of the scary things, because you lay in bed or you're driving or something and you wonder just how little sanity or how much sanity is left in your brain. And that's where, when you become that helpless, oh, it's so difficult to cling on to God's love. But that's what brings you back eventually. You know, I don't know if you've watched the show The Chosen, the series. But somebody asks Christ if this is it, if this is the kingdom of God, if there's going to be any more suffering. And he responds, bones will still break, okay? But, you know, and bones still do break. We still believe in God. We have God. He's there. We know it. But you're in this world. It's broken, and you're going to experience it, you know?
Yep.
Now,
so,
go ahead.
You asked if we watched it, Scott. So the crux, then this will seem shallow, and it'll seem like, wow, how could a guy get so anxious about a simple thing like moving? But it was 3.5 years ago. We were still kind of in the pandemic, and we were downsizing from a much bigger home to this little townhome. And so when we moved in, we had nothing. We had a couple of chairs. We didn't have cable TV. All we had was our phones and a bag full of clothes, and it was going to be that way for about 6 weeks until our furniture got out of storage because we wanted to do some painting in our new place. So at night, I was still so anxious, and the only thing we had was the Chosen series, the first season, on my wife's phone. And so we would lay in bed each night and watch another episode. Well, listen, the first season was only so many episodes. To this day, I think we memorized, but it was such a thing at that time. It's like, Mama, we got nothing else, and this is all we can watch. And it was just what we needed at that time. I didn't need to watch a football game or a baseball game, as big of a sports fan as I am, but again, God used this little program to just settle my heart and just get me back into the at least starting to think that the clouds were going to go away and the sun was going to come up again at some point.
You know, we talked about on the last show that we did how it takes practice. It takes practice being. Accepting God is not a Sunday morning thing. It takes daily practice. And again, it took my conversion experience to realize that this isn't a part-time thing. I mean, I study the Catholic Catechism in the morning. I'm taking a 1-year course. Instead of the Bible, I'm taking another 1-year course in the Bible at night to acquaint me with all the books. And throughout the day, I think and meditate. And it's something that if I don't practice, especially since I'm prone to anxiety, that will disappear, and I know you're practicing it. I mean, I'd like you to talk a little bit about the book that you wrote, because I'm thoroughly impressed with that.
I would love to talk a little bit about that, Scott. So again, just for the benefit of folks that don't know my story, it came later in life. It came at a point where I was going through another tough spot, another tough this is Earth situation. And I was 61 and a half years old and found myself out of work, which is not that unusual for me. If you know my story, my resume is longer than most. But my plan at that point was to just find another job. And really, for a lot of reasons, in my mind, I had myself convinced that's what I have to do, right? I wasn't ready to retire on a number of fronts. I don't think I was ready psychologically. I certainly wasn't ready to do it on somebody else's terms. I mean, the short of the story is I was fired from my job. And I didn't necessarily think that we as a couple, me and my wife, were ready financially. So she is a financial advisor by trade, and she settled that score right up front. She said, listen, you don't have to worry about money. Like she said, we're okay, just retire. And I wasn't listening. I said, nope, I'm going to keep looking for a job. So every day, Scott, I would get up, you know, look for jobs, submit resumes. I believe I set some kind of a record. I could submit a resume at 8:30 in the morning and get a regret letter, you know, by 5:30 that evening. I mean, it was so clear, like, that I wasn't going to get another job, but I still struggled with it. But I also kept looking, and in my, I needed something to fill this time void, because we were ultimately at that point in the pandemic. My wife was one of the earliest people to get COVID. She was very sick for weeks, and you know, I had nothing to do except tend to her, which wasn't that hard. Just watch her laying in bed, apply for jobs, and then I thought, let me just start, as you said, journaling / I didn't know where this was going to go, but I wanted to document what I was going through, and that was kind of where the book came from. I don't know if this is a good thing or a bad thing, but the time it took me to write it was not long at all, and I'm not a trained writer. Anybody who read my book can see that. But really, to get those thoughts on the paper, it only took me about a month, and it was the same thing every day. Write a little bit in the morning, write a little bit in the evening. Have my sick wife proof it, make sure it wasn't too bad, and then I go to bed, rest, sleep on it, repeat the same thing the next day. And when it came time to publish, I was out of tricks. I didn't know much about writing a book. I knew nothing about publishing a book. And again, the Lord provided a very good friend who came alongside of me and helped me to self-publish with his assistance. And that's kind of how the book came about. But it's been a blessing to many, and the folks who didn't like it were kind enough to say they didn't like it. So it's just another way that God has allowed me to tell a little bit of my story and maybe encourage.
Well, there's a reason why I'm asking. I want you to, not that we're doing a plug, but it's a plug. The name of the book is what?
It's The Incredible Power of Simple Service.
And explain that, because I think it's important for people to know what that means and how it affects you.
I have to tell you, Scott, it is the crux of the book. So in that period of time where I was scrambling, and Scott, I'm just a doer, right? I can't sit still. So I really needed something to do for a lot of reasons. It wasn't good for my mental health to just sit around while I was trying to find another job. So, you know what? I talked to close friends about it, and a friend of mine who lives in St. Louis, the story is in the book, but he says to me, why don't you do that supermarket shopping thing? And I said, what are you talking about, right? And he said, my daughter's doing it. He said, I don't know the name of it, but he said, you go to the store and you shop for other people. And this, listen, it intrigued me enough to do a little bit of research. And the outfit that I hooked up with, it's a gig job, right? It was called Instacart, and it became wildly popular during the pandemic. I started it pre-pandemic and ran about 2 months into the pandemic before I decided that the supermarket was a pretty dangerous place to be. You know, early in the game, you know, when none of us knew enough about it. So, but Scott, the blessing that brought me, it not only occupied my time. I'm going to be honest. It was at a time that, you know, a couple $100 a week extra didn't hurt. Like at least I didn't have to ask my money or ask my wife for money, which was, you know, a blessing in and of itself. But what I found out quickly was all the people that I was delivering to, you could profile them pretty easily. They were either young moms who just, you know, had a couple kids running around, and it would seem to me that would be a nightmare for them to get out to the supermarket, just in any situation, let alone during a pandemic, or maybe older folks. And I could very easily look at some of these folks and think, wow, they're either my age or a little older than me. I'm able to still get out and shop. They can't. And it just, these blessings started to sort of pile up to the point where my wife and a lot of people who knew me started to question my motives. They're like, what are you doing? Like, you're going earlier every day and you're staying out later at night. Like, what are we missing? And I said, I can't explain it, but I can't stop it. I'm also a very competitive person, right? So there's a competitive angle to all this, in that I'm not technologically savvy. You had to live and die by the cell phone. I knew nothing about the supermarket. Like I said, I didn't know Quaker Oats squares from Hollywood squares. And just that whole learning process, I knew more about the supermarket than the folks that worked at Wegmans. I mean, the Wegmans folks would come to me and say, hey, it just became a learning experience for me, a blessing to help others. And I would not have traded that for the world. And basically, that's probably 60% of the book. The Instacart stories are clearly the favorite part of the book, as people kind of respond back to me. And, I'll ask them, what did you like about the book? Instacart stories, hands down.
I think I'm just thinking back to, intro psychology in college, and then, reading about Buddhism and meditation, and of course Christianity, and every science agrees that altruistic behavior, helping others, creates this chemical release that is A, indescribable, it's euphoric, and B, just has these long-term effects on our brain. And when you're going through something that you and I went through, pretty much around the same time, and you can get out there and make people smile, when you're going through this completely selfish disorder that we had, it just has amazing effects on us. Now, you still have to wake up the next day, obviously, and fight it all over again.
Yeah.
But it's a pattern that, if you create a pattern that can get you out there and follow Christ's footsteps, let's just say it that way, because that's where this is all about. It's miraculous. It is, and you and I both went through that.
Yeah, it was a huge part of me getting better. Absolutely, I look back on that. By the way, Scott, it hasn't stopped. It's become the blessing, if I'm honest, has become a bit of a curse, because the word is out, and everybody now knows, if you need help, call Bill. And listen, I love it. I absolutely love it. But I am busier now than when I was working full time, without a doubt. And the blessing is still as big as ever.
Yeah.
But I do need to get my arms around it at some point and say, hey, like I need to pay a little bit of attention to my wife and my family. Praise the Lord, she's still working. She loves her job. She's in business for herself. But when she finally does retire, we do have to act a little bit like we're retired. Specifically me. She's got other plans other than helping my buddy remodel his basement. So yeah, we're going. My schedule is going to change a little bit over the next couple of years, but I love it. I don't see ever retiring from that until God just sets me down and says, hey, physically, you're not going to be able to do certain things anymore.
But then you'll be giving to your wife when she retires.
That's it.
So
that is it.
Again, you're still giving, you're still getting, you're
Yep.
still living out the Lord's plan.
Yep.
And maybe she can go do a little, cheerleading with you too. It's pretty
Scott,
cool.
you mentioned it, and I don't know if you got to the spot in the book, but one Saturday she said to me, let me go with you. I said, honey, no. It's really, like, to be honest, Scott, she owns 2 small businesses. I said, you work hard enough. And she said, no, listen, I think part of her wanted to see, what this was all about, right? And so I said, okay, we'll go. We'll just go together. And, you sit there and you watch your phone and you're waiting for an order, and you're not waiting for just an order. I had learned to find the better orders from the not so good orders. So, a couple of not so great orders came up on a Saturday morning, and we did them together, right? And so I said, look, there really makes this, there's no sense in us just doing this together all day. I said, why don't we just, split up, right? Because she was on the app as well. I said, I'll take the next order, or you take the next order. And I said, I'll take the one after that, and then I'll circle back and pick you up. She said, okay, right? So a really good order came in, and I took it, but it was a big order. And then right behind that, my wife took one. So now we're shopping in different supermarkets. I go do my longer than I think. And I'm thinking, surely she's going to be waiting at the door of the supermarket for me, right? She has to be done shopping, and she's not at the door. And so I look, and I had coached her up, because I'm the expert now. I said, go to, the dry goods first, and then the bakery, and then the frozen stuff last, so that it doesn't all melt. So I don't see her like in the dry goods. I don't see her in the bakery. I'm thinking for sure she's at the frozen foods, and nowhere to be found. So I double back through the store. She's only about halfway done the order. She had the most panicked look on her face, and I'm thinking, wow, like she's handcuffed. Like she can't do this. I don't know if it was the app or the phone. So I helped her finish the order, and I just felt like her knight in shining armor. Like I came swooping in to help her finish what used to come naturally to her. But it was a fun day, and needless to say, she never did Instacart with me again. That was got it out of her system, and I became the hero for one moment.
Good. Well, we're going to wrap up. This was fantastic, and I would love to keep going on. We'll do it again, but Bill, you have been a godsend. This has been great, and I think the message that again we found is by trying to get out of ourselves and helping others, we can cure a lot of our own evils that we see. So again, God bless you. I'd give you a big hug if you were here. We'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Take care.
Thank you for coming, and we will hopefully have another show like this shortly. God bless. Amen.